I'm a big fan of late 80s and early 90s anime about robots, neon-lit cities, and futuristic detectives like 80 Police and Goku Midnight Eye. Looking for something a bit different to play on my 3DO, I found out about Belzerion, which looked like it was gonna tick all those boxes. I ended up playing it, beating it, and simultaneously writing a translation and walkthrough for it, which I'm currently in the process of editing because I enjoyed it so much. However, in the meantime, I thought I'd take you on a trip to Shangri-La. Belzerion takes place in Shangri-La, a huge domed city run by a supercomputer called Vishnu. Leon, the protagonist, is an amnesiac who is close to execution for war crimes, when his old commander, Ken Bernard, gives him a reprieve. Leon rejoins the Force, and is thrust into what feels like an 8-episode OVA with a larger story taking place around you. The game itself plays out across 3 distinctly different styles. The first is Adventure Mode, which acts like a point-and-click adventure, with Leon wandering around clicking on things to examine them. 3D Building Mode, which allows you to move freely around 3D rendered buildings, and Battle Mode, in which you battle. Weaving together the modes are cutscenes, which pretty much just take the form of still images, text boxes, or very simple animations of sprites interacting with each other, like crashing, tearing each other's limbs off, or other family-friendly activities. Let's break down each of the modes. Adventure doesn't come up too many times, but takes the form of an extremely simple screen-based way of getting from point A to point B. There's very limited interactivity with environments, with the player being able to do something like interact with a pack of smokes or look at paintings in a gallery, but that's about it. Ultimately, the adventure portions seem a little pointless, with the player spending most of their time in cutscenes, the 3D building mode, or battles. The art in the adventure mode segments looks nice enough, but isn't anything too special, and the music is just satisfactory. 3D building mode forms a large part of the game, and is pretty enjoyable. The player is given objectives, sometimes obvious and sometimes not, such as finding their way through a maze of dust chutes to escape a lockdown building, or navigating cyberspace to hunt down a virus. While they're doing this, a developer incorporated some really nice touches, like actually getting the player to press an elevator button and even animating the elevator moving, which was pretty rare for a game like this back in 1995. Additionally, while encounters with enemies are set, they're incorporated really organically into the 3D building exploration. So for the most part, when you enter battle mode, it doesn't feel too jarring. The actual exploration is pretty smooth, and even though you are obviously moving on a grid, the turning actually feels like you're turning, and using doors and interacting with NPCs is pretty enjoyable. Over the course of the game, 3D building mode also gets more and more complicated, with players being made to navigate mazes, find their way through locked down floors on a building, or my favorite, navigate a trapped floor to destroy a creepy robot. Or he could just destroy himself. That's fine too. Eventually, you'll encounter Battle Mode. This is the next major part of understanding Belzerion. Leon is equipped with a Protect suit in these sequences, which allows him to go toe-to-toe with any manner of cybernetic nasties. These sequences take a little bit of getting used to. The first few aren't very taxing, so you won't really feel like you need to practice dodge rolling with the shoulder buttons or carefully managing your shield energy at first. However, by the last few fights in the game, you absolutely must understand how to dodge properly and use your shield appropriately in order to come out on top. Leon can punch with a straight or a hook, or fire a blaster. The trick to doing well in battle mode is learning when to use a straight, a hook, or shoot. Each attack has a specific range, wind-up time, and window in which it'll work in a battle. Enemies can shield themselves to certain types of attacks or jump in and out of range. So, practicing and learning what they can and cannot do and then adjusting your strategy accordingly during fights is essential. I have to say, I found the battle mode extremely satisfying and really fun to play. The difficulty ramps up quite nicely and organically over the course of the game, and while at first the fights feel a little bit slow and cumbersome, they're designed for strategy, and are much more satisfying than if you were just standing there trading identical blows with one another until one of you dies. So, Belzerion is comprised of a fairly redundant adventure mode, a fun 3D building mode, and a really enjoyable battle mode. There's a few smaller things about the game that bear mentioning. There's no real in-game menu in Belzerion, nor can you save whenever you want. Saving is only possible once you've finished a chapter. Additionally, there's no inventory for healing items, no dedicated healing button or anything like that. The only way to heal is by designated points in the story when the game decides to work that specific action into the plot. Luckily, the game isn't so difficult that healing is that important. One of the reasons for this is because the game treats checkpoints very liberally, in the sense that you have an unlimited amount of them, and if you die, you just restart the same fight with full health and energy, effectively meaning with some persistence it's impossible to not finish the game. There's a nice undercurrent of that 80s and 90s cyberpunk anime feel to the look and sound of Belzerion. It feels a bit like Diet Snatcher mixed up in a blender with 80 Police Light and Zero Sugar Bubblegum Crash. Beyond some thematic and surface level parallels to other media, the game has a distinct sound to it that I really like. The use of animated sprites and polygons during the 3D building and battle modes really adds a lot to the feel that the area you are in is alive and real, and it's a bit of a shame that there isn't more of this. Seeing a camera pop down to check you out, or the elevators moving when you're in them, tends to take you by surprise, as they're not used all the time. A special mention should be made of the cutscenes, which are a bit inconsistent. Sometimes they're very dull, and just feature a talking head babbling about techno-gubbins for a seemingly impossible amount of time. While other times, they're cool fights or explosions and animated sequences that are really eye-catching. The soundtrack is altogether really good, with certain tracks standing out more than others. If this sounds like something you'd enjoy based on your own tastes, then you'll get something out of the look and sound of the game. However, if not, you might feel like it's a tad dated. Belzerion is an altogether solidly put-together title that I enjoyed quite a bit. The battle mode is great fun, and the exploration in 3D building mode adds to the feeling of the world you're in being alive. The adventure mode is totally redundant, and the cutscenes tend to either be really fun or very bland, depending on the stage of the game you're in. It also bears repeating that the game is completely in Japanese. It takes some translation work to understand what's going on in the story, and due to Belzerion's structure, like an OVA, it takes some time for the elements of the story to come together, which makes everything a little hard to understand or follow while you're working out what characters are saying. For 3DO fans, this is still a pretty approachable title, and one I'd recommend to anyone if they want to try something a little bit different from the usual fare.